This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth, for competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty, for the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meatpackers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We have a great show. I have a friend of mine, Jack Berkman, who's an excellent individual. He is a co-host. He is a host, rather, on Radio America and has a show on Newsmax. He knows his way around Washington. He's one of those good lobbyists that are on our side, a conservative. So he'll be joining me in this segment and in the next segment. And we also have Ryan Bundy on later. He was on our show last week, but he didn't really get a chance to explain why the people of Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and other western states own the land which the Bureau of Land Management, which was being run by this evil individual by the name of Neil Corrence, who was the hand-picked person put in there by the corrupt Senator Harry Reid, how these people carried out a paramilitary attack against the Bundys. And, of course, it's flowing back into their face right now. They were thrown out of court. The Bundys' indictment was dismissed just a few weeks ago with prejudice, means it can't be refiled again. And now we're on the counterattack. And we're going to have Ryan Bundy on. But first, I want to get into what's been going on with perhaps the most corrupt prosecutor in world history, Robert Mueller, the special counsel. Not a man of integrity, as the Washington establishment likes to call him, a man who scratches the backs of both political parties. That's how he got ahead. That's how he became FBI director. And that's how he became special counsel. He's a nightmare for President Trump. And he's not only just been leaking information illegally from grand jury proceedings, which is a crime, and I have a lawsuit pending in that regard, but he's also been pushing Trump to be interviewed. And that's important because Trump's lawyers, Ty Cobb, as I've said, he's the great-grandson of the famous baseball player, but unfortunately this Ty Cobb has struck out. Then you've got Jay Sekulow, who's a fine religious rights lawyer, but he's not a criminal defense lawyer. And then you have John Dowd, who's Washington establishment and basically is to be seen and not heard in terms of representing President Trump. They're all negotiating to have President Trump interviewed under oath by Robert Mueller and his leftist staff, all of whom either donated money or voted for Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Maybe not all, but nearly all. So this is a nightmare because it's a perjury trap. And I urge the president, this is my message right now, go with your instincts. Do not go with where these lawyers are leading you. They're leading you down the primrose path to either indictment or impeachment. They have Bannon now that's been subpoenaed by Mueller. He's a snake. You can't trust what he says. There are other witnesses out there that will say things and that will be used against you to say that you lied under oath, even though you didn't, and you'll wind up indicted and impeached, particularly since Mueller's been using this grand jury investigation for political purposes to whip up anti-Trump propaganda in the media. This is all intended to get the Democrats elected to Congress to take over Congress, the House, and perhaps even the Senate in the fall election. And when they do so, they will surely try to impeach the President of the United States. And that's the stakes here. And that's why I want you to go to freedomwatchusa.org. freedomwatchusa.org. I want you to support our case and sign our petition. We're making major legal efforts to try to have Mueller removed as special counsel. We want him, frankly, disbarred, and we want him prosecuted for what he has done because he's violated tenets of prosecutors. He's one of the two most corrupt prosecutors of our age. You have Comey, who is a prosecutor, even though he's FBI director. We actually had a satirical Time magazine cover that we issued right before New Year's that they won the award for the two most corrupt prosecutors of 2017. So that's that. Next, I want to talk about the case that we brought against Robert Mueller, and that's because we filed complaints at the Office of Professional Responsibility and Inspector General of my alma mater, the Justice Department, my once proud alma mater that's become the Department of Prosecutorial Misconduct and Injustice, regrettably. We see this in the Bundy case as well, and we'll talk about that. But when the Justice Department and Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who himself is under investigation by Mueller for alleged collusion with the Russians and also for alleged obstruction of justice and firing Comey, he has become inert. He did not investigate what I asked him to investigate, and that was the leaks from the grand jury that have been occurring by Mueller and his staff. And consequently, I filed a complaint in federal court. It was assigned to a judge by the name of Amy Berman Jackson, an Obama appointee, highly political, Harvard-educated undergrad and law school, and I'll be blunt here. She's a political hack, and we're going to talk about that with Jack Berkman just in a few seconds. Let me tell you about Amy Berman Jackson. I'm going to tee this up. We have a lawsuit that we filed for the families of Ty Woods and Sean Smith, Patricia Smith and Charles Woods. They were the parents of these proud heroes, Gold Star parents. And the case is against Hillary Clinton. It's for wrongful death and defamation. The basis of the wrongful death is that Hillary Clinton used an unsecured private email server, which admittedly was hacked. Even Comey admitted that, by at least 5 hostile forces. That gave rise to the coordinates of Ambassador Christopher Stevens, in all likelihood, and that led the terrorists to Benghazi, to the consulate, to kill our client's sons. Hillary Clinton was negligent. Wrongful death is a negligent act. It can also be intentional. So we filed a civil complaint for that. This is the difference between what we do and what my former group, Judicial Watch, does, which is just primarily get documents. We bring these cases to get justice. So we've got Hillary Clinton pinned up against a wall on wrongful death in this case. We also brought a case for defamation because Hillary Clinton told our clients that this attack was simply the result of a walk by some Muslims in the woods that night, and they were mad about a video of Mohammed that criticized him. I mean, that was ridiculous. And she was telling her daughter Chelsea and the president of Egypt exactly the opposite, that it was al-Qaeda that committed this attack at the same time. When our clients revealed that during the presidential campaign, Hillary Clinton defamed our clients, called them liars. She has no immunity for that. She was a private citizen at the time. She can't hide behind the fact that she previously was Secretary of State. Well, what does Amy Berman Jackson, who was randomly assigned this case, do? She waits until the eve of Memorial Day. I was down there on Miami Beach taking a few days off in my native state of Florida, and across the internet comes her ruling. She dismisses the case without legal basis right before Memorial Day. Now, ask yourself, would a Harvard-educated person do that unintentionally during a period when my clients, Gold Star parents, were grieving for their sons? That was not just to curry favor with Hillary Clinton, who she probably hopes will help her get a higher job, maybe on the D.C. Circuit, maybe the Supreme Court someday or wherever. And also she's a partisan. She obviously loves Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's a soul sister. But it was most likely done just to stick it to them out of vindictiveness. And that was abhorrent. This case is on appeal. I'm confident it's going to come back, and we're going to ask for another judge when it does come back to the lower court in Washington. That's number one. Number two, when I filed the case to have Mueller removed with the Justice Department for ethics and criminal law violations, it was randomly assigned to Amy Berman Jackson. Now, maybe it wasn't so random. Maybe there's some clerk who's sending these cases in her direction, and that would be improper. But anyway, she wound up with the case. What did she do before the complaint was even served, before our so-called government, through the Justice Department, even entered a notice of appearance? She dismissed it. That's up on appeal right now. She said we didn't have standing. I submit we do have standing, and that's on appeal, and that'll come back too. But now I turn to what Jack can talk about. And Jack is an expert on these matters. I've appeared on his show. He's on mine. We are soul brothers, okay? They're soul sisters and soul brothers. We're conservative. We're not rabid leftists like Amy Berman Jackson. But he was recently dragged into the prosecution of Paul Manafort and Rick Gates, who were indicted by Mueller and his staff for alleged criminal acts which they were alleged to have committed before Manafort even became the campaign chairman of Donald Trump, and before Manafort had any contact with Trump even on the transition. This has nothing to do with Mueller's mandate that was given to him by Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who's a Democrat. He was formerly U.S. Attorney in Maryland for Barack Obama, who appointed Mueller because Sessions had recused himself from the investigation since he's being investigated. This was assigned to her. Now, what has Amy Berman Jackson done? Amy Berman Jackson not only confined Manafort and Gates to house arrest, she put on a gag order, which is unconstitutional, saying they could not even defend themselves in the media after they were being attacked by the leftist media. So I turn to Jack right now. We're going to have him for this segment and the next segment and perhaps part of the third segment on this case. I want him to explain what his involvement in this case is, and he recently was attacked in front of his house viciously by someone who obviously didn't want him to be able to speak about his thoughts on all of these matters as well. Jack?
Larry, it's a pleasure. Comrades in arms we are and have been for many years. What a pleasure, my friend.
Mutually.
Well, I'll tell you, Larry, a lot of very suspicious things going on in the last 5 days. As I told you, I had attended we got of all things, a black helicopter passing above me right now. A few days ago, I had attended the hearing of Manafort Gates, and I just kind of walked in quietly and sat behind the fence. And I wanted to, if for no other reason than I wanted to learn the trial schedule. But she got into, the judge, political hack that she is, first of all, as you know, she scheduled the trial right before the election, I believe somewhere in late September, early October, so that her Democratic bosses will love that. More importantly, she harassed both Manafort and Gates on this issue of whether and the extent to which they can attend fundraisers. Now, Paul Manafort has a lot of money. He doesn't need anyone to raise money for him. Rick Gates has a wife and 4 children. Poor Rick is starving to death with legal fees that will go beyond probably $1 million. It could even be $2 million by the time all this is over.
Jack, we've got about 5 seconds here. We're going to be back in the next segment. In just a minute, I turn your attention to our website at freedomwatchusa.org. We'll be right back.
Fearless.
Disclaimer, he's crazy, he's racist, he's out to kill the Democrats.
Dangerous.
You don't care, he uses the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
We're back with Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman, yours truly. Jack, pick it up where you left off, because this is a very important story and very troubling.
You know, it is, Larry. And so I was at the hearing, and the judge basically said that they cannot attend any fundraisers where media are present. So she's got a gag on them, a gag even though, as you know, no jury is impaneled or even close to being impaneled. And now they are not allowed to attend fundraisers. So they can come to my fundraisers, but we can't bring the media there. They can't speak to the media. Worse than all of that, she's even somehow concerned if I speak to the media as a surrogate on their behalf, she will go at them, accuse them of violating the gag order if I do that, and then even implied threats to me, even though I'm not even part of the proceedings or under indictment or anything. Somehow she feels she has jurisdiction over me, which, of course, she does not. So this discussion of nothing goes on for, 25 minutes, and then she gets into the scheduling the trial for October and all that. Now, after that, I go out in the press. I was talking to the press outside, and I made the comparison. I compared, and this is maybe 11:30 a.m. when it was all over. I compared her, I think correctly, to Hitler 1943, to one of his show trials. And I said, is this a show trial from Hitler 1943? Maybe it's a trial from Stalin's Russia in 1935. I said, did we lose the war? Maybe Hitler won the war, and I just missed something in history. Anyway, so then I head home, and I was going to the store to get a steak for the dog. He hasn't been eating too well, and he likes steak, as dogs do. And so I'm walking back into my driveway, and I'm attacked. There is a black SUV sitting in my home in Arlington, sitting right in the driveway. I said to the guy, who are you? Who are you? This masked man with one of those masks like you would see in a Mark Wahlberg bank robber movie. He gets out. This is the only time in my life I ever feared, I don't know if you've ever been in immediate apprehension of fear of death, but I was. And I've never felt that way before. Maybe a lot of people have. I haven't. And I thought what was coming next was a 9mm, and I was gone. And then he took out pepper spray and blasted my face. And, of course, you burn and this and that, knocks me down. Then he comes over and hits me over the head with something. I thought it was the can of pepper spray. It might have been a club or I don't know what it was. And then he runs away, and I'm screaming, and the neighbors come out, the police come, and that was that. Now, I have no idea, obviously, who did this. I am struck. I don't have a causal nexus, but the correlation seems to me pretty powerful. I don't have any personal or business issues, at least that I know of. I had just attended a hearing where I called the judge, comparing her to Hitler's judges in Nazi Germany in 1943 or Stalin in 1935, and only 4 hours after that, I was attacked in a savage attack. And so I'll let your listeners can draw their own conclusions.
Well, we live in the world. That's the world we live in today. You know, I've lived in it for a long time, having founded Judicial Watch, run it for 10 years. Now, Freedom Watch. I actually had security guards at Judicial Watch. I had a Navy SEAL. Of course, sometimes I was more afraid of him than I was of the Clintons at the time. He's kind of like a Doberman Pincer. He seemed a little bit on edge from time to time.
Good analogy.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy.
But the bottom line here is that in the world we live in today, you're not allowed to express yourself. This judge is highly corrupt. She's political. I'm taking action to have her held to account. I can't say specifically what that is, but this is a bigger problem with judges. And it's what we're facing today, and it's why I hope people will go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org, sign our petition, help me remove Mueller, because Mueller is fomenting all of this. I'm going to be intervening in this Manafort case to make the argument that Mueller did not have authority to bring indictments against Manafort and Gates. That is similar to our other case, which was to have him removed because he's exceeded his authority, and I'm going to advocate in that regard. But I want to talk about, and I want you to stay on the other side of the break too, Jack, for about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to bring on Ryan Bundy.
Sure.
But this is the problem that we have with judges today. And there was another judge this week, Judge Alsup, out there in San Francisco, of all places, beautiful city but crazy people, who nullified President Trump's order on DACA, which eliminated DACA. And, of course, the ultimate outrage is that I had brought a case for Arpaio a few years ago where we nullified Obama's order on DACA, and therefore there was no reason for Alsup to nullify Trump's, because DACA was no longer even in effect, went all the way to the Supreme Court. It was shot down. And that's how confused the legal system is and how legally compromised it is. When we come back, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about judges, and we're going to close this particular issue for now, but we'll be back to it, and I hope to have you back soon.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
We're back with Jack Berkman, and we've been talking about Judge Amy Berman Jackson. Frankly, she's on a fast route for potential impeachment. Of course, in these days, you literally have to be caught taking money across the desk to be impeached if you're a federal judge. In the old days, when we first had a Constitution that's now been shredded, you could be removed for bad behavior. Now, this is clearly bad behavior, and she's clearly a political hack. And I'm going to say that because I have to say the truth. I'm a lawyer. I can be retaliated against, in terms of the cases that I'm in by these judges. But there are some good judges in the District of Columbia, Judge Royce Lambert, Judge Richard Leon. We have a new one, Timothy Kelly, appointed by Trump. I believe he's going to wind up to be a good judge. But 95% of the judges in that courtroom are highly political, highly leftist, appointed by Clinton and Obama. Jack, I wanted to get your take on it because our system, basically, our legal systems have become a cesspool of politics, and it's really, we've lost our protections against tyranny by the other 2 branches of government.
Well, Larry, I'm sure you will agree, separation of powers is great, but at the end of the day, all three branches become corrupt. All three branches, despite checks and balances, can become bottled up with money, and they can become bottled up with the establishment and the system, and that's what's happened now. The final safeguard, well, there were two final safeguards. One is the First Amendment, free speech, specifically free speech, and then the Second Amendment to bear arms. Those are really the only two things that keep us safe. Free speech is gone. And that leads to a dark place where I don't want to go. But it's starting to seem that the only way to remain free is the right to keep and bear arms. And I think we need a much more heavily armed population, heavily armed citizenry, in large measure to protect itself against Washington and the government. And that's a sad conclusion. It's not one that I want to draw, but I think it's where we're going as a society as we move deeper into this deep state and dark state, and we head into a very dark time in American history.
Well, we have. And, I'm actually a believer in the justice system. That's why I do what I do. That's why I founded Judicial Watch and then Freedom Watch, because I believe that judges are our most important public servants. Not all conservatives believe that, because in theory, they protect us from the tyranny of the other two branches of government. And when it breaks down, and when you see what this judge has done, putting gag orders on, she put Manafort and Gates under house arrest, and Manafort put up $11 million. He's not a flight risk. And Gates just recently was let out. Manafort's still under house arrest. And at the same hearing, I read that Manafort presented a doctor's report that he needed to get out of the house to go to a gym to work out. He's been in his house now for months and months.
And she won't let him. She won't let him.
She won't let him out. She's literally torturing the guy. She's kidnapped him. Okay? She's like the judicial version of Al-Qaeda in some ways, if I may say so. He's a hostage. And it's unbelievable.
Here's where I may be. Here's where you and I may differ a bit. I'd like to believe that I believe in the judicial system, perhaps not as strongly as you do, because judges, in my view, at least in the modern part of the country, have become. They're all cogs in the political system. They're just one more employee in the political system, no different than a Hill staff or anything else, or a lobbyist or this or that. They're cogs in the wheel, and it's one big corrupt political machine where judges are no longer special players. And that's what I meant when I said you really, checks and balances can't save us anymore.
Well, I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. We have about 10 seconds here, but I'm not disagreeing with you because this is the problem. I'm saying in principle we should have biased independent judges.
Yeah, of course.
Jack, I want to thank you for coming on. We'll have you on again, and thank
Larry,
you for having me on your show.
Great pleasure. Keep up the fight, Larry.
Thanks. God bless, Jack. Special prosecutor with Larry Klayman. That's me, of course, and I have my very proud friend, a member of the Bundy family, somebody who, to the extent I could, I tried to help him. He did a great job during his trial. He was sui juris, otherwise known as pro se. He was representing himself. He did a better job than any of the other lawyers because he knew the evidence. He was tough. He stood up to this judge, Navarro, who also was very political, much like we're talking about with Amy Berman Jackson. And in the end, the indictment was dismissed with prejudice, the superseding indictment with regard to Ryan, his brother Ammon, and his dad Cliven. And I want to reintroduce, he was on last week a little bit. We wanted to get him back to talk about why the people of Nevada own the land. 85% is claimed by the federal government, not the federal government. Ryan?
Well, when we start talking about land ownership and whether it belongs to the state or to the federal government, the reason, the answer is easy. It's in the Constitution. Again, we understand and know that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. The Constitution is what grants authority to the federal government, and without it, the federal government would not exist, nor would they have any authority at all. And so the question then is where in the Constitution did we, the people, grant the federal government authority to own land? And that is, of course, in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the United States Constitution, wherein we, the people, granted Congress exclusive jurisdiction, exclusive legislation over a district not to exceed 10 miles square. And we know that 10 miles square to be Washington, D.C., and which is where the seat of government is. Now, we allowed the federal government to have like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state wherein the same shall be. In other words, the land in which they're purchasing, they must get the state legislature's consent. And then that land has to be used for military bases, arsenals, dockyards, magazines, and other needful buildings. And that is the only place within the Constitution that we allow the central government to own land within an admitted state of the Union. The only other land spoken of is in Article 4, which is territorial, and that does not specify that Congress owns that land. In Article 4, we give Congress the authority to dispose of and to make the necessary rules and regulations respecting the territory. To dispose of means to get rid of.
Well, let me interject here. Why is this important? Because the Bureau of Land Management, which conducted a paramilitary raid on your ranch, which violently tased your aunt, threw her to the ground, which tased your brother, which kicked your dog, which killed your cattle, which threatened to kill you. They had a kill list hanging up on the wall with targets with X's on them. I mean, you name it. Because the federal government was the one that was trespassing on your ranch. You weren't trespassing on the federal government's ranch. And in fact, there was no jurisdiction in theory and in practice for the federal government to do what it did by sending in these BLM goons to threaten your lives and to harm you. And that's the bottom line here.
Yes, and therein, Larry, you answered your own question. You asked why was it important? Why is it important to know these things in the Constitution? It's important because they simply do not have constitutional jurisdiction and authority over this land. All of these lands that the federal government claims, such as the Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service, monuments, wildlife refuges, wilderness, etc., none of those are supported by the Constitution. And so the Constitution being the supreme law of the land, that then makes all of those pieces of land illegal, unlawful. And the agencies that then run them are also illegitimate. Now, maybe there is a little bit of federal land, obviously, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, which outlines those. If they need a Bureau of Land Management to manage those lands, I guess, okay, you can claim that agency is legitimate, but only upon those lands.
Well, what happened in your case with your family that has been ranching that land for 150 years, that's acquired grazing rights and water rights, is the Bureau of Land Management moves in. Your dad discusses this eloquently, so do you, so does your brother Ammon and Mel and Dave. And the way they attempt to manage it is to drive you out of business, because they literally, with all these environmental and other regulations, tell you where your cattle can eat. I mean, it comes down to the absurdity is them telling you, in effect, what bush they can eat at. Now, you ranch on about 400,000 acres in and around Lake Mead in Nevada, close to Las Vegas. And Cliven decided he wasn't going to sign the contract to have BLM manage the land, because that would be your own death knell in terms of being a rancher. And that's why this whole issue is important. Am I right?
Yeah, all of that lends play to that. Okay, and you did mention the contract. We stopped signing the contracts. Well, and contracts, and it's an important issue, because contracts are a legal part. The Constitution recognizes contracts. And so if we sign a contract with an entity such as the Bureau of Land Management, well, now that contract becomes law pertaining to those who signed it, pertaining to those who agreed to it. And so now both, all the parties of a contract are now legally obligated to the parameters of that contract. And so wherein my dad said, okay, I'm no longer signing a contract with you, that means that they are not party. They have no agreement. One does not, so therefore there's no parameters, no aspects of that contract that is binding upon either party now. My dad is not bound to anything the BLM says, nor is the BLM bound, anything with my dad. There's no contract. Easy way to say it.
So therefore the pretext was, and they never even sent your family a bill, the BLM, for the grazing fees, is what I understand. But they used the grazing fees as a pretext to conduct a paramilitary raid to threaten the lives of you and the rest of your family, to assert federal power over you, when in fact they had no jurisdiction to do it. And that's exactly what King George III did in the days leading up to the American Revolution. Busting into homes, taking property, pillaging, raping women. In this case, we had women assaulted. And this is the importance of your case. That's why I gravitated to you all, notwithstanding the fact that you're fine people and stood up for the Constitution and risked your lives. But the other thing was, at the end, the government was trying to settle this thing, and you and your dad and your brother said, no, I'm not going to settle this thing. I'll risk life imprisonment for a principle. I'll risk it for the Constitution. I'll risk it for the American people to make a point. And we fought the law. We fought the outlaws, rather, and won. And you are true American heroes. This has not been done before in modern American history. And of any case I've ever been associated with, Ryan, this is the most important, and in fact, it's the most rewarding to see how you all won this thing. And that's why we need to carry on. We're not done yet. We've got some things planned here. And, stay tuned. But, I just wanted to thank you for everything that you've done and your family's done, because you did it not for yourselves. You did it because of your belief in God, and you did it because you knew that the Heavenly Father had his hand on your shoulder along with Jesus, and you did it for the American people.
Well, I appreciate the compliments there, Larry. Thank you. And you hit a lot of good points there. The BLM went on acting as though there was a contract in place and that we were in breach of that contract, when in fact there was no contract. And so that is the parameter for which they're claiming to say that we owe them these grazing fees. They're claiming that we owe them, this amount, which of course there is no bill, and there cannot be a bill because there is no contract. There's no agreement to pay. We're not in breach of anything. And yet they went on to try to enforce that with their military force, military type force, I should say.
And this is what, Ryan, as we're coming to the end of this segment, and we'll have you back again with your dad and your other brothers, but this is why what you did was so important. This was out of control abuse of federal government power. Thanks, Ryan, and God bless.
Thank you.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
We're back with the concluding segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Let me call it The Verdict. When I ran Judicial Watch, I started a newsletter called The Verdict. I'm giving the verdict here. The problem that we have in today's world is that truth is fiction, fiction's truth. We have fake news. We have a lot of misinformation out into the public domain. And that's why this show on Radio America, which is also podcast, and you can find it at our website at freedomwatchusa.org, is so important, because we try to tell the truth. And I even tell the truth when I'm involved, okay? I don't always sugarcoat things. I don't always tell you what I think I want you to hear, so you'll donate money to our cause, tax-deductible contributions to freedomwatchusa.org. But I want to tell the truth. And one of the other things that we've been doing is trying to get the memoranda that James Comey wrote about his conversations with President Trump. These were the memoranda which he leaked to the media through his law professor friend at Columbia University to try to trigger the appointment of Robert Mueller, trying to suggest, if not show, that the president obstructed justice by firing him. Now, Comey's a hateful individual. He's a corrupt individual. At one time, he had some integrity. He stood up against George W. Bush for warrantless wiretaps. But somewhere along the line, he got corrupted. He became part of that cesspool in Washington, D.C., the swamp. In fact, we'll have it up on our website shortly, but there's a photograph of an alligator being strangled by a python that's been out there in the media this week, and it kind of reminds me of the swamp in Washington, D.C., and hopefully we're a little bit like the python, although I'm not real fond of them either. They're snakes. But there's some media out there right now about the case that Freedom Watch brought, and Judicial Watch is a plaintiff to my former group, now run by Tom Fitton, who's not a lawyer. And Fitton's boasting that there was a great success and a great victory because this judge, this very political judge by the name of James Boasberg, also an Obama appointee, not that much different from Amy Berman Jackson, has decided to look at these memoranda in camera. Well, that's being oversold. That's hype on Tom Fitton's part. Maybe he doesn't know better because he's not a lawyer, but that doesn't mean those memoranda are going to be released. And it tells you why we have to keep fighting, because all that judge is doing is looking at them in the confines of his chambers to decide whether to release them. We need media to convince these judges to do the right thing, convince in quotes. We need to be able to file complaints against these judges when they violate the law and the rules of ethics. And that's why I founded Judicial Watch years ago, and that's what I now do at Freedom Watch. We need hard-hitting cases to bring about justice, not just to get documents, which is primarily what Judicial Watch does. We need to bring hard-hitting cases like we do at Freedom Watch. So I hope that you'll support us because we're the ones that are sticking our neck out in a major way. And I'm going to tell you the truth, win or lose, what this is all about. It's not just about public relations. It's not just about getting on Fox News or getting on any other network or being in the media. It's about doing the heavy lifting in court. And I'm a trial lawyer 40 years. I'm doing the best I can. We don't always win, but we have to keep punching because eventually that tree will fall. That tree, as we say in the Bible, of good and evil, will turn good if we eventually keep it up, don't lose faith, and continue to believe in God and to know that He's got our hand on our shoulders like He did on the Bundy family, and that we will prevail and that we will save this republic. Now, I'm trying to do it at Freedom Watch, and you can see what we do at freedomwatchusa.org in a legal way. I don't want to see violence. But I'll tell you something. If things keep it up, like happened this week in San Francisco with this Judge Alsop, another political hack, a Clinton appointee who nullified President Trump's elimination of the DACA order, and if there are other judges like Amy Berman Jackson and even this Judge Boasberg who wouldn't even give us the photographs of Osama bin Laden after he'd been killed, there's no privacy right for that, but he was protecting Obama, who didn't want Osama bin Laden, who was a Muslim, to have his picture put out in public. If we don't fight these people, we will lose this country and there will be violence. God forbid. I don't want to see it. People will be in the streets. So that's why I want you to go to freedomwatchusa.org. Sign the petition to have me appointed special counsel to investigate Robert Mueller, to investigate Hillary Clinton, to investigate the crimes of Barack Obama, and also support our efforts. Sign that petition to file lawsuits to have Robert Mueller removed. We'll be back next week, but in the meantime, look carefully at that website. Go to YouTube, see what we put out there for Freedom Watch TV. We need your support. We need your prayers. We need your help. God bless you. God bless America. We'll be back soon.